Let's talk about this first story right here. Louderwithcrowder.com officially suing YouTube. Steven Crowder initiates legal action against YouTube. From Crowder's website, they report last week, Louder with Crowder LLC, through its lawyer, gave a legal notice to YouTube of the intent to file a lawsuit and seek an injunction. They go on to mention they have a video available on their website. Last fall, after the Vox adpocalypse, YouTube remonetized Crowder's channel. They said, we had a record-breaking election live stream in November and incredibly successful streams thereafter. If there ever was a target painted on our backs, it was then. Once we hit the new year and a new president ascended, the landscape of social media shifted in favor of the left. Democrats took control of the presidency and now have control of both houses of Congress. As such, YouTube and other big tech platforms feel emboldened with very few lawmakers standing in the way. He says, in 2021, YouTube hit them with a warning of a strike over election content, then issued the first hard strike. The first strike was related to a COVID policy in their March 18th video of the 1-year anniversary of 15 days to flatten the curve. The studio is familiar with YouTube's policies on COVID, so I'll just give you the gist of it. And I went over this the first time they gave him a strike. Crowder did not break any rules in this capacity. And I got really angry because I get this email from Google when this is going down, like well in advance of any of the censorship, straight up saying, here are the exact conditions you must meet to violate this policy. And I said, that's easy. They said you can't say two specific things together, which obviously I can't say because YouTube will take us down if I do, even if I explain it. That's the way this works. Their algorithms don't understand the difference between explaining something and it's all the same to them. Crowder never said that there was widespread fraud. Crowder never mentioned about, anything about overturning or anything like that. They gave him a strike, which is bunk. The next one, the second one, is the craziest. Apparently, they're claiming that Crowder and his team were glorifying the death of Ma'Khia Bryant for agreeing with the police, that the police officers were justified in the shooting. Now, of course, Media Matter says that they were mocking, the woman. I don't see that as still violating the policies, which says, glorifying or reveling in someone's death. When you're like, hey, this is the law. If you break it, this is what's going to happen. I think YouTube is reaching. As Crowder explains, he says the concern they have is that YouTube is actively looking for violations in their past videos that aren't actually violations in order to issue a third hard strike once they're allowed to stream to the platform, which would deplatform them from YouTube. YouTube has a pattern of applying policies and even stretching those policies beyond any reasonable reading of the policy in order to harm channels which take a contrary view of their opinions. We experienced this. We only have ever gotten a warning, but it was on our episode with Alex Jones. And they claimed that a hyperbolic statement was glorifying violence or something, and they took the full podcast down. And I said it was a half a second. Can I just snip it out? And they're like, no. They were looking for any possible excuse to take our video down, and I think that's pretty obvious to everybody. So he was going to mention why you should care. No matter what side of the political aisle you're on, YouTube isn't encouraging debate. It's trying to squash debate, trying to eradicate ideas from its platform it simply does not like. One day those ideas are about the election. Then they're about COVID. Now those ideas include applauding an officer for saving a woman's life. When will enough be enough? Well, this is really important, but I got to say to Steven and crew, obviously we all care. I think the people who watch this show care about principle and recognize the commies going to have their free speech. The Nazis going to have their free speech. And we're going to be annoyed with them, but we're going to argue. And that's the purpose of free speech. We want our rights protected. And that means people you don't like, they get rights too. The problem is the people we're up against. I hate to call it left and right because it really doesn't make sense economically or even in terms of tradition versus progressivism. It's just zealots who want power, whose ideology is there is no truth but power, and then people who are like, let's have a fair debate, a fair argument over this. So they're suing. They're filing an injunction. And I wonder what precedent could be set. There's a lot that people need to understand. Like when we watch James O'Keefe filing these lawsuits against the New York Times and CNN, a lot of people say you can't do it. You can't do it for this, that, and this reason. Oh, it's going to get thrown out. You can only do it until you do it. If you keep backing down and saying, there's no point in suing because what's going to happen? It's going to be a waste of money. Okay, listen, I understand if you don't have the money to file a lawsuit, that's a challenge. But if you just sit there and let these companies do this, there will never be precedent set. So I'll throw it to you guys. Otherwise, I'm going to keep ranting on the censorship. Ian, obviously, you were talking about just before the show creating terms of service for mines because you helped put that together.
Yeah, honestly, in addition to it being up against, like you said, zealots, people that are just like kind of crazy about political correctness and stuff, we're also up against centralization of power and machine learning algorithms that aren't necessarily, and we're seeing the flaws in the system of a centralized service that's dictating what can and can't be said through a machine algorithm, because stuff gets taken out of context. Like you said, you can't explain certain things even though you're not using it derogatorily,
because the voice to text thing they do for captions would just show the sentence. It doesn't understand. I'm like, here's exactly what YouTube said I can't say. They'd be like, we see it in the code, gone.
Yeah.
You see this also in like the firearms industry or the gun world. So there's gun tubers, people who make YouTube videos. You could say Grantham's a big one. Warrior Poet Society is a good one.
Hickok 45.
Hickok,
he's great.
He's classic.
I love that. I love that.
So, but I mean, you can. So the firearms industry actually, in some ways, not the industry, but the community, because culture as well, was somewhat saved by the internet because it allowed people from rural areas, because a lot of more firearms ownership in rural areas, communicate with one another, and then they started making YouTube channels so that people could learn how to do things. And it is ironically controversial in the United States right now. I don't want to use ironically too heavy because it's way too hipster, but like it's
you're right though.
Yeah, right. No, but it's ironically controversial that a person can have their page taken down because they were teaching somebody how to not hurt themselves.
Do you remember when Google banned the word gun?
Yes.
This was the best thing because so you couldn't search for the word or any combination of the three letters GUN.
Yep.
So I searched for the anime Gundam.
Yep.
It wouldn't come up. You couldn't buy Japanese action figures. That's how stupid their censorship is.
Yeah, like my personal Instagram is @FoxRowOfficial, and my search page is all Gundams with like and motorcycles, because it's like you look at my page, I've got guns and motorcycles, but my search history, if you look at the search page, it's all
Gundam.
It's all it's all anime characters. And
why are you searching for that? It's just defaulting it.
Well, I mean, I did play Final Fantasy VII once.
Great game.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, right.
Great game.
One of the best.
Yeah.
The remake was good.
I enjoyed the remake.
But that's
exceptional
weird
music.
Story. Anyway, Google only like a lot of people were. So we went to the range yesterday. We're filming the vlog, and we fired the Barrett. What is it? M82A1.
That's the kind of nomenclature that people use. Yeah.
And 50 BMG, and Crowder gave he sent me a year ago a SIG M400, and I also got a SIG tread sight. And it was amazing. It was just really, really great. And we did it all safe. I mean, Forrest, you clearly know how to shoot. We're giving instruction. We also had the instructor on site. And a lot of people were just like, I got asked like 10 times, are you sure you can do this? Like, YouTube will delete your vlog, won't it? And I'm like, I went through the rules. They say as long as you're showing the weapon and shooting it in a range. I mean, obviously there are YouTubers who are still producing, but I don't know. Maybe we'll get the channel demonetized.
Yeah, I mean, there's different types of content you can see people creating. Either it's just like short films. People do that with all the time, usually with airsoft guns, but you get the point. But they also do how to disassemble a firearm so you can clean it. So when your channel, your video gets demonetized because you're teaching somebody how to safely clean their firearm, you're getting dinged with something that says you're teaching someone how to manufacture, assemble, right? which is one of those things where like the people who are running the asylum are not the right people, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's contradictory. When it's you're watching people perform gun safety, and so they punish you for it.
Yes.
So one of the things they said is that you can only show a weapon in an appropriate place, like a gun store or a range. You can't just have one in like an office room or something. I guess they'll give you a strike.
Sure.
You could. So there's a local range out here, and they have rooms that look just like classrooms because they do safety trainings. Yeah, you can't do that.
No, absolutely.
They'll be like, oh, wow, that's not
It looks too much like this, so we'll take it.
It looks like a school.
It could be, yeah.
And then you're going to get in trouble. You're going to get dinged. You're going to get censored. And therein lies the big problem. I love how you said it was ironic because America it's a gun country, and these massive services, namely YouTube, will ban your content. And I have to wonder too. There's definitely an overlap here. Obviously, Crowder is usually he got. I think what does he have, the Walther on his on his desk?
He's got a Walther. Yep.
Yeah. And I wonder. Because I've always been curious about that. I'm like, dude's got a gun sitting on his desk, or he's got his holsters, and I'm just like, I'm pretty sure there's some, Democrat anti-gun person sitting at YouTube HQ in Silicon Valley with their finger over the ban button, just like, stupid gun, moron gun, no, I don't ban you. And then they're just waiting. They're waiting. Like Crowder said, they're looking for something to get him for.
Yeah, and I think that's the part where you establish intent. Like it is not really about honest disagreement. We're looking at intent now.
But the bigger question is, and I'm glad Crowder is filing legal action. This is a good thing because, like I said, you've got to sue and then make that argument. But they can ban whoever they want, whenever they want, right, Ian?
According to most terms, I haven't read the YouTube terms. I know Twitter says we can ban you at any time for any or no reason. That's intentional.
So it's interesting now that we as individuals who operate on these platforms have no legal protections. And it's interesting. Maybe we shouldn't. Maybe it's our own fault. That's why I set up, Timcast.com, because I'm like, okay, I'm fairly libertarian. If YouTube's got a company, they don't owe me anything, and it's their platform. If somebody came into my house and started, throwing food on the floor, I'd be like, get out. Someone came into my house, started screaming a bunch of Nazi stuff, I'd be like, dude, get out. Not going to be having that. The difference is YouTube has been subsidized by Google. They've monopolized the space. There are platforms where you can upload videos, but YouTube is absolutely dominated. And now it's kind of the only place where you can run a business. It's a really, really complicated argument. No other service offers monetization in the same way that YouTube does. And so, what's this?
Or do they? Recoil is currently building, and we have Recoil TV, which functions similar to YouTube, and we are building a monetization path.
It's expensive to host these videos, though.
We have it. So if you are a firearms content creator, get a hold of us because we'll put you on Recoil TV. It doesn't cost you anything.
Oh. Wow.
Yeah.
But how, you guys got to fund that? Run ads or something? Or
we fund it through the fact
right
that people like our publication.
There you go.
Really.
But it can get really, really expensive. So for instance, in the members only section of our website, we have to pay for that bandwidth, and it is a lot. Like it gets up to tens of thousands of dollars. People don't realize this. YouTube's free. So we broadcast right now on YouTube. We get 40K concurrent views, on average during the election. We had like 140 or some on one podcast. That means for the 2 to 3 megabits up we're sending out 140,000 times 2 megabits. All of that data YouTube's paying for.
Yep.
And then they take a small percentage of super chats, and they take a percentage of advertisements. So the issue is they're funding the cost for all of these things. Should we be entitled to the service? And that's where things get challenging. And man, I'm pretty much on the fence. But so long as I'm on the fence in terms of like their business, private company. But where I draw the line is if they've monopolized public discourse, if they have grown to the size to where they are influencing elections, now I think it's a public service. And that's interestingly a more liberal argument conservatives never used to have. And I'm like, I think that they've grown and taken over the commons. We don't have town hall discourse anymore. People are coming to this show and hearing arguments and discussions and commenting. YouTube's effectively dominated the space. Well, now they owe public discourse, in which case I think it's extremely dangerous if they're going to start removing people who are setting up who are setting up their businesses. Maybe a better way to put it is if a private company bought all of the available business space in downtown, at a certain point, people are going to be like, okay, fine, you can own it, but you can't ban people for selling a product you don't like. Like, people can pay you rent, you can set up terms for the property, but we need commerce to exist. Crowder needs to be able to speak. We need to be able to have reasonable discourse. And what the problem I see with this is that massive multinational corporations, if they see YouTube get away with this, they can just start to dominate whatever public space they want, whatever area of the commons they want, and then just say, but it's a private company, it's ours now. Shut everybody out. And then, I don't know, what, people get violent?
Well, on the forefront of that, you're also looking at what is the intent. Again, you think about it in the sense of, we could talk about guns, we can talk about anything political, even with Steven Crowder. Do they not want him to be heard, or do they not trust him as a good faith actor? Is a good question, right?
Well, I think if you look at the left faction, tends to be, in my opinion, there is no truth but power faction.
Yep.
They accuse the right of being that, and it's really insane that perhaps many of the establishment Republicans, for sure, but when we're looking at anti-critical race theory individuals and their alignment on the right, these are the people who reject that ethos. And so quite literally, you have the left lying and accusing the right of what it's doing itself, which creates a serious problem. Do they think Crowder is a bad faith actor? No, I think they believe Crowder is truthful.
And they don't like it.
Right, because they're bad faith actors who are trying.
They're angry by his success. They're angry by his success.
There are a lot of leftists, a lot, maybe the majority, who are good faith, but they're following the bad faith Pied Piper, believing they're following the truth. And then they say the same thing about Trump and Trump's diehard fans. And I'm like, okay, but that's not the majority of whatever this faction is.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people who are like begrudgingly voting for Trump, and then you have a lot of people on the left who begrudgingly voted for Biden. So it's interesting, but in the end, people like in the intellectual dark web, disaffected liberals, moderates, have more in common with conservatives based on moral frameworks and rejection of critical race theory and left identitarianism, believing in free speech, than the establishment Democrats. And there's a big difference between voting for Trump and voting for Biden. You vote for Trump because he's a human Molotov cocktail, or because you really like him and his policies. People vote for Biden because he's a feeble old man they think they can overtake and steal power, or they genuinely like his policies, but I believe that was probably like a tiny faction. Most of the people voted for him because they just hated Trump.
Yeah.
Based on that, you cannot build a government. So,
yeah, what, a house divided against itself?
Yep.
So
I know most people have more in common than they realize. I think that's Occupy Wall Street showed that when people were railing against the Federal Reserve and like the monetary system, kind of putting us all against each other.
They had to stop that.
It's so sad when people get confused and start to go at each other like this. I don't like it.
yeah, the no truth but power argument is a great form of sort of moral cynicism, but it's very manipulative. It's not a very well, first of all, it's very honest because the people who say it are only interested in power, so at least they're consistent in that sense. But it says
Rest in power.
There is no truth but power, which is how I'm going to use that philosophy to take your power and give it to me. It's not the statement there no truth but power is not complete. It's only the first half. It's there is no truth but power and I deserve it.
It's interesting because I understand what they're saying when they say that. That what's the point of having an argument with you if they want to create their own system, their own utopia, their own leftists, perfect world. There's no point having an argument with a bunch of people who disagree with them. They just need to take your power away, destroy your system, and then build a new one. So for the time being, I don't think the core of their philosophy is there is no truth but power. It's in order for me to build my utopia, I must seize all of your power and the truth be damned. And that's where we're at right now. Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and if you want exclusive members-only content segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.